Support for the roundup comes from Symphony 3. Councils around the country are working hard to keep their communities safe and prepared before, during and after emergencies such as bushfires and floods. And in recent weeks, Symphony 3 has been working with councils around Victoria, including Greater Bendigo, Mildura, Ararat and Golden Plains, to create emergency dashboards, pulling together live data including weather, traffic, emergency incidents, unplanned and planned disruptions, news and social media feeds. An emergency dashboard is cost-effective and can be deployed in just 3 days. Find out more at www.symphony3.com. Just ahead on the roundup, stricter rules on Victorian councils for collection of unpaid rates. Planning reforms past the Victorian Parliament. Pushback on plans to sell an historic defence site in Melbourne's west. A mayor calls for fairer regional airfares after Qantas pulls out of a key route. A council successfully prosecutes environmental offences. Moreton Bay's economy hits new heights. And 2 troubled UK councils turn the corner towards recovery. Hello there, I'm Chris Eddy. Welcome back to the Local Government News Roundup, a selection of news from and about councils across Australia and beyond. Our podcast is brought to you by the Victorian Local Governance Association, the national broadcaster on all things local government, with VLGA Connect returning today. And support for the podcast comes from Symphony 3, simple, connected customer experiences. Good to have you here. It's Friday, the 6th of February 2026. Victorian councils are now facing stricter rules on how they manage unpaid rates, in changes designed to help struggling ratepayers amid the state's cost of living crisis. New ministerial guidelines that came into effect this week will require all 79 Victorian councils to offer flexible payment plans to residents under financial pressure. The changes ban the practice of charging compounding interest on deferred rates, a practice critics have described as creating a debt trap for vulnerable households. Under the new rules, councils must provide modern payment options, including fortnightly or monthly billing, and treat hardship applications with compassion and equity. Councils are also encouraged to communicate clearly about available support and to avoid charging interest when ratepayers are experiencing genuine hardship. Customer advocates have welcomed the move, saying it will provide much-needed consistency and protection for households already stretched thin. However, some councils have raised concerns about the administrative burden and the potential impact on revenue collection. Councils now have a legal obligation to comply with the guidelines, with non-compliance potentially leading to ministerial intervention or judicial review. Victoria's Parliament has passed the Planning Amendment Bill, which introduces mandatory affordable housing requirements into the state's planning system. The legislation gives councils and the Planning Minister the power to require social and affordable homes in new developments. The government says the reforms will cut red tape, fast-track good developments and make the housing system fairer. Chia Vic, the state's peak body for community housing, celebrated the passage of the laws, saying the new mechanisms are encouraging. A committee of stakeholders, councils and experts will now design regulations to implement the mechanism in partnership with community housing organisations. The historic RAAF base at Point Cook is among 67 defence sites across the country set to be sold for an estimated $3 billion. But Wyndham Mayor Josh Gilligan has vowed fierce opposition to any housing development of the site, telling The Age it would create Australia's least livable suburb. The 112-year-old base houses nationally heritage-listed World War II aircraft hangars. Any housing development would require approval from both houses of Victorian Parliament, as the site lies outside Melbourne's urban growth boundary. The Victorian Government's big announcement of more than 1,200 new train services across the state has sparked anger in the Goulburn Valley, with local leaders demanding answers. While regional cities like Traralgon, Seymour and Echuca received additional services, Shepparton was overlooked despite a promise made back in 2021. City of Greater Shepparton Mayor Shane Sarli told the Shepparton News that enough is enough, and he's asking for the 9 daily return services that were promised between Shepparton and Melbourne once infrastructure upgrades were completed. The work, funded with $320 million from the federal government, wrapped up late last year, but Shepparton still has only 5 weekday services, the same as before. State member for Shepparton Kim O'Keefe called the delays unacceptable. Federal member for Nichols Sam Birrell questioned why the Victorian government hasn't delivered on its commitment. The Department of Transport and Planning says planning is progressing, but offered no timeline for when the additional services will actually start running. Murrindindi Shire Council says initial assessments indicate that the Shire experienced nearly half of Victoria's total damage from the January 9 bushfires. 4 weeks later, the community faces a long recovery process requiring detailed assessments of approximately 450 kilometres of roads and every impacted property. Mayor Damien Gallagher says recovery is a journey, not a moment, and Council remains committed to standing alongside the community throughout the extended recovery period, especially as they mark the anniversary of the 2009 bushfires this weekend. A recount has revealed a tie in Campaspe Shire's Citizen of the Year award. Bruce Hamlin and Jim Webb, both from Tulane, will now share the honour. Bruce is one of the district's oldest surviving settlement family members and a life member of the Tulane Fire Brigade. Jim has strengthened the community for over 2 decades through his work at the Tulane Hotel and support for local initiatives. And Yarriambiack Shire Council is seeking community feedback on proposed changes to waste and recycling services from July. The changes include a 10% increase in residential curbside charges and new glass recycling collection. Transfer station fees will rise to $45 per cubic metre, aligning with neighbouring councils. A new food organics and garden organics service will be introduced from July 2027 to meet state government requirements. Community consultation closes on the 13th of March. Also making news, Frankston City Council has been officially accredited as an established welcoming city. The accreditation highlights the council's strong leadership in areas including reconciliation, community engagement and anti-discrimination initiatives. A new co-working business hub at MC Square in the city of Manningham is under construction. The council says the hub will feature 27 desk spaces, meeting rooms, focus pods and modern amenities to support the small business community of Manningham. It's due to be completed around April-May. And a parliamentary inquiry into local government funding has begun hearings in Canberra. Committee Chair Fiona Phillips says the inquiry will examine whether current funding mechanisms meet local governments' evolving needs. Further hearings are scheduled throughout the year. And in more news of national interest, the Australian government has announced $5 million in grants to support councils left with unpaid debts after Rex Airlines entered voluntary administration in 2024, a move welcomed by the Australian Local Government Association. But ALGA President Mayor Matt Burnett says increased federal funding through financial assistance grants is crucial for councils to maintain and modernise critical regional aviation infrastructure worth $3.6 billion. 12% of these facilities are currently in poor condition. Over the border we go to New South Wales, and Albury Mayor Kevin Mack has called for Qantas to subsidise regional routes using profits from more lucrative services following the airline's decision to end its Albury-Melbourne flights from March, leaving the border city without any service to the Victorian capital. The Border Mail reported on Councillor Mack's criticism of regional airfares as prohibitive, citing minimum costs of $450 to $600 for Albury to Sydney return flights. It comes as the Federal Productivity Commission has been tasked with investigating regional airfare pricing after finding they cost 52 cents more per kilometre than capital city routes. Qantas says high costs, small populations and irregular demand make regional aviation commercially challenging. Mid Coast Council has successfully prosecuted Palm Lake Works Proprietary Limited for 6 environmental offences related to unauthorised earthworks and development at Palm Lake Resort Forster, which contributed to flooding damage in July 2022. The company was fined nearly $644,000 and ordered to pay $700,000 in the council's legal costs. General Manager Adrian Panuccio said the outcome vindicated the council's decision to pursue the case and demonstrated its commitment to enforcing planning laws and protecting the environment. The Sydney Morning Herald reported that it's obtained emails that reveal former Parramatta Council CEO Gail Connolly was accused of failing to properly staff Lord Mayor Martin Zeta's office. Councillor Zeta complained in February last year that he'd been disadvantaged with only partial staffing despite being budgeted for 4 full-time positions. The Lord Mayor demanded to know why recruitment for a senior advisor and full-time personal assistant had been delayed for months. Ms Connolly responded that positions had been temporarily backfilled and that recruitment was underway. But the article characterises the exchange as revealing a breakdown in relations between the two most powerful people at the council before Ms Connolly's sacking in a late-night council meeting last year. Liverpool Plains Shire Council is fighting to fix its struggling finances after being found to be operating at a loss with low cash reserves. The Northern Daily Leader reported on the council's growth strategy to turn some towns into commuter suburbs for Tamworth workers, with median house prices at just $311,000 compared to Tamworth's $585,000. The plan aims to attract working-age families. The council's also working to boost industrial and tourism activity while protecting the region's vital agricultural industry. Wollongong City Council says the New South Wales Reconstruction Authority's regional response to last April's devastating storms failed the most affected community. The Illawarra Mercury reported that the council's submission to a state parliament review criticises the decision to use a regional recovery model instead of setting up a local committee for Wollongong. In some areas, 250 millimetres of rain fell in just 24 hours, flooding the Princes Highway at Bulli and inundating shops and homes. The council says coordination from Goulburn was informal and ad hoc, resulting in a lack of targeted support for local needs. In more Wollongong news, the council has reportedly reversed its stance on shark nets, voting to support the full state government's Shark Smart program, including nets. Region Illawarra says the move is a shift from 2021, when councillors requested a review of the practice. Shell Harbour City Council is pushing ahead with a draft policy to ban smoking and vaping at all sports grounds, regardless of whether events are on, according to a report from the Illawarra Mercury. The proposed blanket ban goes beyond state legislation, which only prohibits smoking during organised sporting fixtures. The policy would also cover patrolled beach and lake areas and within 10 metres of skate parks and outdoor fitness equipment. Councillor Peter Harle has been elected Deputy Mayor of Liverpool City Council following the resignation of Dr Betty Green. The retired TAFE teacher, who has 18 years of council experience and previously served as Deputy Mayor, will hold the position until September. And Lithgow Mayor Cass Coleman has celebrated World Nutella Day with Ferrero Australia representatives, recognising the Lithgow factory's significance as the sole producer of Nutella for Australia and New Zealand. Ferrero also received the 2025 New South Wales Primary Industries and Regional Development Award for their sustainability efforts. Also making news, Shoalhaven City Council is conducting its annual traffic and pedestrian monitoring program this month and next, surveying 27 locations for traffic movements, 62 intersections for turning patterns and 343 sites for speed monitoring. The Hills Shire Council has named the grandstand at Kellyville Memorial Park Community Centre after Jack Iori OAM, recognising more than 60 years of dedication to rugby league and community sport. And Hawkesbury City Council has rolled out a new AI-powered online tool to simplify the development application process. Using a $144,000 New South Wales Government grant, the Archistar platform lets users enter a property address and quickly learn what planning controls apply to their site. This is the Friday edition of the Local Government News Roundup. It's episode number 547, brought to you as always by the Victorian Local Governance Association, with a new season of VLGA Connect starting later today. You can listen to it on podcast, or if you dare, you can watch it on Facebook. And this week we'll be joined by Catherine Arndt and Josh Fergus, VLGA CEO and President respectively, to set the scene for Fast Track coming up later this month on the topic of incivility. Look out for VLGA Connect, new episode dropping later today. Let's head to Queensland, where the city of Moreton Bay's economy has added $830 million in output over the past year, according to its latest economic strategy report card. The economy reached almost $25 billion in gross regional product and created 6,500 new jobs. Mayor Peter Flannery attributes the growth to strong performance in advanced manufacturing, food and agribusiness, tourism and international engagement. Central Queensland councils are pushing to transform the region into a major defence operations hub. A plan includes 5 key investments: a defence logistics hub, short-term accommodation, a medical and rescue centre, an uncrewed systems hub, and expanded maritime capabilities. Town hall forums are gathering community feedback to refine a business case, with regional leaders saying the move could replicate the economic success seen in Darwin and Townsville. A final proposal is expected in late 2026. Redland City Council's biosecurity team has intercepted prohibited and restricted plant species at a Mount Cotton property being sold on Facebook Marketplace. Officers removed high-risk invasive species, including waterweeds and cacti, classified as prohibited under Queensland's Biosecurity Act. Mayor Jos Mitchell is warning residents to check species are legal before purchasing plants online. Brisbane and Townsville will host 14 matches of the 2027 Men's Rugby World Cup. Brisbane Lord Mayor Adrian Schrinner says the event will be a massive win for Brisbane's global sporting reputation, while Townsville Mayor Nick Demetto says the event will showcase North Queensland to the world and inspire young people across the region. The expanded 24-team competition will be played across 7 Australian cities in 5 states over 6 weeks. And Fraser Coast Council is starting $3.6 million worth of road and footpath upgrades around the future Hervey Bay Community Hub. Mayor George Seymour says the improvements will make the city centre safer and more accessible for pedestrians, cyclists and drivers. Works include raised safety platforms, new pedestrian crossings, speed humps and wider footpaths along Old Maryborough Road. The community hub, featuring a 2-level library and disaster resilience centre, is expected to open in the second half of the year. Down to Tasmania now, and Devonport City Council is threatening to sell 2 properties to recover outstanding rates, including one partly owned by Homes Tasmania under an equity sharing scheme. The Advocate reported that $10,000 is owing on one property and more than $8,000 on another. Homes Tasmania says the primary owner is responsible for rates, and they work with owners to explore payment plans. The council hasn't sold any properties for unpaid rates in the past decade. Both owners have 90 days to settle their debts. Hobart City Council is calling on the Tasmanian government to fund a pilot extreme weather protocol for people sleeping rough during extreme heat or cold. The protocol would activate temporary emergency shelter when existing safe space facilities are overwhelmed by weather-related demand. The council has developed a detailed proposal through the Greater Hobart Homelessness Alliance, working with multiple agencies, including the Bureau of Meteorology and State Emergency Service. If the state refuses to fund it, the council has resolved to allocate budget for a 2-year trial. Acclaimed Australian artist Georgia Hill is transforming a 120-metre concrete flood levee wall at Launceston Seaport with a striking new mural. The artwork features the phrase, "The way you see it, it's beautiful," in Hill's signature style of bold lettering and textured patterns. It's the latest in a series of public artworks backed by the City of Launceston over the past 18 months. Mayor Matthew Garwood says the council is ramping up its focus on street art to bring more life to public spaces. In South Australia, the Southern and Hills Local Government Association has released its 2026 state election policies. pushing parties and candidates to support the rapidly expanding region. The area contributes over $14 billion annually to South Australia's economy and expects 87,000 additional residents by 2051. SHLGA President Mayor Moira Jenkins says infrastructure and services aren't keeping pace with growth, causing congestion and housing pressure. And in WA, the Bunbury Wildlife Park has temporarily closed its main building due to structural issues identified during routine safety inspections. The city says all animals have been safely relocated and are thriving in appropriate care. The park remains fully operational with all exhibits accessible, while detailed assessments are underway to determine necessary repairs. Time for the global report now. Quite a bit to tell you about today. Let's start in New Zealand, where the City of Wellington's Deputy Mayor Ben McNulty has apologised for calling an anonymous social media user a nonce in January. He claims he didn't know the term was an offensive reference to sex offenders, particularly those who abuse children. 9 News and the New Zealand Herald reported that Mayor Andrew Little has upheld a code of conduct complaint against McNulty following the incident. Selwyn District Council has apologised after overcharging some ratepayers due to an error in its rates calculations. The mistake occurred when updated property valuations were loaded into the rating system without applying a required cap on valuation increases, with residential properties overcharged by about $85 and rural properties by around $500. Central Otago District Council will repay close to $20,000 after incorrectly charging some smaller infill subdivisions a reserve land development contribution. The Central app reported that the $10,000 charge was meant for larger greenfield developments, not infill projects in established areas with existing parks. Tauranga Mayor Mahi Drysdale has described the aftermath of the Mount Maunganui campground landslide as the hardest week of my life. 6 people died when the landslide hit the beachside holiday park on January 22nd during a severe storm. Radio New Zealand reported that the council is under intense scrutiny over its ownership of the campground, with an external review now commissioned to identify lessons and prevent future tragedies. And Bulla Mayor Chris Russell has doubled down on his refusal to speak to reporters, saying he'll maintain his written-only media protocol throughout his mayoralty. Councillor Russell is believed to be the only mayor in New Zealand who won't front media, requiring all questions in writing and only answering those he deems appropriate. Now to the UK, and 19-year-old George Finch, who leads Reform UK's minority government in Warwickshire, is defending a 3.89% council tax increase, despite the party's pledge to reduce taxes. Council officers warn the rise is insufficient to balance the budget and threatens the authority's financial viability, according to The Guardian. Lincoln City Council has joined a small group of English councils proposing to freeze council tax in the coming year. A handful of authorities are dipping into reserves or using unexpected windfalls to avoid increases and ease cost of living pressures. The move goes against the trend of most councils raising taxes to the maximum permitted level. Birmingham City Council says it's no longer effectively bankrupt after 2.5 years of financial crisis that saw a 17.5% council tax rise. The authority now has a balanced budget with £130 million earmarked for investment in streets, libraries and youth services. And the government is stepping back its intervention in Nottingham City Council after commissioners reported substantial progress in the authority's recovery. Ministers are minded to replace the current statutory oversight with 2 envoys who'll work in an advisory capacity for 18 months. All decision-making powers currently held by commissioners will return to the council, though work remains to embed continuous improvement. In the US, a man dressed as Batman has blasted Santa Clara city officials over potential ICE presence at Super Bowl 60, calling them cowards and traitors, according to USA Today. Federal authorities have indicated ICE agents will be deployed in the Bay Area during the game this weekend. The NFL says it's working with federal and local agencies to ensure security at the event. And USA Today reports that Los Angeles city leaders are demanding the LA 2028 Olympics chief, Casey Wasserman, step down after newly released files showed flirtatious emails between him and convicted sex trafficker Ghislaine Maxwell, dating back to 2003. Wasserman has apologised for the association, saying it predated revelations about Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. County and city leaders say his presence distracts from preparations for the 2028 Games. And some stories out of Canada to finish. At Kamloops City Council, councillors have defeated Mayor Reid Hamer-Jackson's motion to ban the hiring of councillors' family members. The proposal was voted down 4-1, with councillors citing discrimination concerns and potential legal risk. 3 councillors recused themselves from the vote, according to CFJC today. In Montreal, the mayor, Soraya Martina Ferrada, hit 2 potholes in her car on Notre Dame Street, leaving her with 2 flat tyres that required replacing all 4. CTV News reported that the incident came just hours after she called the city's pothole situation catastrophic, with 4,200 reports filed since January 1st. The mayor says her insurance will cover the damage and she won't ask taxpayers to foot the bill. And CTV News reports that Calgary City Council has rejected a motion calling for the closure of a supervised consumption site in the city. The vote was 8-7 against even debating the issue, which would have sent a letter of support to the provincial government. The final decision on the site's future rests with Alberta's healthcare authorities. And that brings to an end another busy week of the Local Government News Roundup. This edition, number 547, recorded on the morning of Friday the 6th of February 2026. You can find out much more, including story links, by heading to our website, lgnewsroundup.com. Comments or feedback can be sent by email to lgweeklynews@gmail.com. Thanks to our sponsors. From day one, the Victorian Local Governance Association has been with us, the national broadcaster on all things local government. And we receive support from Symphony 3, simple, connected customer experiences. Head to symphony3.com to find out more about what they can do for you and your community. The Local Government News Roundup is recorded in the city of Greater Geelong, Victoria, on the land of the Wadawurrung people of the Kulin Nation. Until next time, thanks for listening and bye for now.